close your eyes for just a moment and imagine standing on the edge of the world, 3,700 kilometers from the nearest continent, surrounded by endless Pacific waters, where stone giants keep watch over secrets that time itself has tried to erase. Tonight, we're traveling to one of Earth's most remote inhabited islands, a place where colossal statues walked, where forests vanished into mystery, and where the very stones whisper questions that no one has been able to answer for centuries. Welcome to Easter Island, or as its people call it, Rapa Nui. Get comfortable, settle into your pillows, let the weight of the day drift away like ocean foam. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll explore 50 extraordinary mysteries together, moving slowly through ancient riddles, vanished civilizations, and secrets that still puzzle archaeologists today. You don't need to remember every detail. Just let the stories wash over you like gentle waves. Let your mind wander across windswept grasslands where 1,000 stone faces gaze into eternity. Take a deep breath in and out. Our journey begins now, beneath the shadow of the Moai. Those silent sentinels carved from volcanic stone, standing between earth and sky, between the known and the unknowable. Let's begin with the greatest mystery of all, the statues themselves. Picture yourself walking across sun-warmed grass, the Pacific wind carrying the scent of salt and ancient stone. Before you rises a Moai, 15 feet tall, weighing as much as 10 elephants, its features carved with impossible precision. And as you stand there, one question fills your mind. How? Fact 1. Nearly 1,000 Moai dot this tiny island. 1,000 monumental statues, each carved from volcanic rock, each weighing dozens of tons. The ancient Polynesians who created them had no wheels, no horses, no oxen, no pulleys as we know them. Yet somehow they moved 80-ton sculptures across kilometers of rough terrain. Theories abound. Teams of hundreds pulling with ropes, wooden sledges, rocking mechanisms, but the truth remains deliciously uncertain. Modern engineers attempt replicas and manage to move them short distances, but the ancient methods, the real secrets, those remain locked in the silent stone itself. Imagine the determination required, the planning, the faith that drove an entire society to dedicate generations to this singular purpose. Close your eyes and picture the teams of workers, chanting in rhythm, moving these giants inch by inch across the island. What songs did they sing? What gods did they invoke? Fact 2. For centuries, visitors saw only the heads. The famous Easter Island heads, they called them. But here's the secret that emerged only in modern times. They're not just heads. When archaeologists began excavating in the 20th century, they discovered that many Moai were buried up to their necks, their full bodies hidden beneath centuries of accumulated soil. And on those bodies, intricate carvings, elaborate patterns suggesting tattoos, symbols, decorations of breathtaking complexity. Imagine the moment of discovery, brushing away earth to reveal a torso, then a chest, then hands, entire sculptures emerging from the ground like forgotten memories surfacing in dreams. The earth itself had kept these secrets, holding them gently until we were ready to see. What else might still be buried? What other revelations wait beneath the grass? Fact 3. In the volcanic quarry at Reino Ruraku, there lies an unfinished giant. El Gigante, they call it. 21 meters long. That's nearly 70 feet, longer than most buildings are tall. If completed and raised, it would have been the largest Moai ever created, towering over its companions like a parent among children. But carving stopped suddenly, mysteriously. The tools were abandoned. The workers never returned. Why? Was there a catastrophe? A sudden change in religious belief? A loss of resources? The giant remains there still, frozen in time, perpetually on the verge of birth but never quite born. Sometimes the most profound mysteries are the ones interrupted mid-creation, leaving us to wonder not just what was, but what might have been. Fact 4. Look into a moai's eyes, if you can find one with eyes intact. Most have hollow sockets now, but archaeological evidence shows they once held something extraordinary. Eyes made of white coral, fitted perfectly into the carved hollows. And in the center of each coral orb, a pupil of jet-black obsidian, volcanic glass polished to a mirror shine. When these eyes were set in place, in a ceremony the islanders spoke of in hushed reverence, the Moai was said to come alive. The statue would transition from mere stone to something more, a vessel imbued with supernatural protection, a guardian with sight, watching over the living with the power of the ancestors. Imagine standing before a completed Moai at dawn, sunlight catching those obsidian pupils, and for just a moment, wondering if it truly sees you. Fact 5. At a place called Ahu Vinapu, there's a wall that shouldn't exist. The stones fit together with such precision that not even a knife blade can slip between them. The technique is unmistakable. It's nearly identical to the masterwork of the Inca Empire in distant Peru. But there's a problem with this. Ahu Vinapu was built before Europeans connected these distant shores, before any documented contact between Rapa Nui and South America. So how did the same architectural knowledge appear on both sides of the Pacific? Was there ancient contact we've never recorded? Did Polynesian navigators reach the Americas and return with new techniques? Or did two civilizations, separated by thousands of miles of ocean, independently arrive at the same remarkable solution? The stones keep their secrets well. Fact 6. The top knots puzzle everyone. Imagine balancing a 12-ton cylinder of red volcanic stone atop a statue's head, 15 or 20 feet in the air. These pukeo, as they're called, crown many of the Moai like enormous hats or ceremonial headdresses. But here's what confounds modern scientists. Experiments attempting to replicate the placement consistently fail. The weight distribution is too precise, the balance too delicate, the engineering too sophisticated for trial and error. How did ancient builders achieve what modern engineers struggle to reproduce, even with all our knowledge and equipment? Perhaps some techniques are meant to remain mysteries, reminding us that ancient peoples were not primitive, merely different. Fact 7. Stand on the shore and you'll notice something unusual. Some Moai face outward, toward the endless ocean, their stone backs to the island. This contradicts everything we thought we knew. Tradition holds that Moai guarded villages watching over the people inland. So why do these face the sea? Were they repositioned during conflicts now forgotten? Do they watch for returning voyagers? Or guard against threats from the waves? Some researchers suggest they mark the sites of ancient wars, battles so devastating that even the stone witnesses were turned away from the bloodshed. Every answer births new questions, like ripples spreading across still water. Fact 8. In 2023, the island experienced an unusual drought. The crater lakes that had held water for centuries began to dry, their surfaces receding day by day. And then, emerging from the mud like a revelation, appeared a Moai that no one knew existed. A statue that had been submerged, perhaps for centuries, perhaps deliberately placed in the water in a ritual we can no longer comprehend. The discovery raises haunting questions. How many more are hidden? What other secrets does the water hold? And why would anyone sink a sacred statue into a lake? Sometimes the earth and water choose when to reveal their mysteries, independent of our curiosity. Fact 9. Scattered across the island lie over 400 toppled Moai, fallen face down in precise, orderly rows. This wasn't random collapse. This was deliberate. Either a coordinated ritual destruction, the Moai being killed, in some ceremonial way, or evidence of catastrophic clan warfare, each statue representing a defeated enemy, each toppling a victory. Walking among them feels like traversing a battlefield of giants, frozen at the moment of their defeat. The precision haunts you. This wasn't chaos. This was purposeful. But which purpose? Sacred right or bloody vengeance? The fallen watch the sky now instead of the land, perhaps waiting for the day they'll be raised again. Fact 10. Listen to the old stories, passed down through generations of Rapa Nui elders. They don't speak of pulling or dragging the Moai. They speak of something else entirely. The Moai walked, they say, through mana, spiritual power, supernatural force. The statues moved themselves from quarry to platform, step by step, animated by something beyond the physical. Modern researchers using ropes and teams have replicated a shuffling, walking motion for smaller replicas, rocking them forward in a way that might echo the ancient technique. But even this only partially explains the mystery, because the islanders didn't say the people walked the Moai. They said the Moai walked themselves. Perhaps some truths live in that space between the literal and the spiritual, where stone and story become one. Let your mind rest for a moment. Breathe deeply. We've walked among the giants, touched their mysteries with our imagination. Now we turn to an even deeper puzzle. What happened to the island itself? What transformed Rapa Nui from a lush, forested paradise into the windswept grassland we see today? The second chapter of our journey awaits. Imagine this island 400 years ago. Not the grass-covered landscape you might picture, but a place of towering palms. Trees so massive they rivaled California redwoods, their canopy creating a roof of green over much of the island. Forests thick with birds, the air filled with song. And then, they were gone. Vanished so completely that when Europeans first arrived in 1722, they found barely a tree. This is the riddle of Easter Island's ecological collapse, a mystery that deepens the more we examine it. Fact 11. By 1650, the giant palms had disappeared entirely. But here's what makes this so haunting. Pollen records trapped in ancient soil show us the trees dying, but they also show us that nothing grew back. Not a single seedling. No regrowth. No recovery. In nature, forests regenerate. Fire burns, trees return. Disease strikes, new growth emerges. But not here. Here the forest simply ended. Some scientists point to rats consuming every seed, every possibility of rebirth. Others suspect something darker, more complex. A cascade of failures so complete that the very capacity for renewal was destroyed. Lie back and imagine that silence. The day the last bird sang in the last tree, and then only wind remained. Fact 12. The evidence points to rats with damning clarity. Bones scattered across archaeological sites tell the story. Rat teeth marks on palm nuts, thousands upon thousands of gnawed seeds. Studies suggest the rats destroyed 95% of palm seedlings. 95%. And yet, why no recovery? Even with 5% surviving, forests should regenerate over centuries. Experts remain baffled. Was the soil chemistry changed forever? Were there other factors compounding the destruction? The rats were surely guilty, but were they the only criminals in this ecological murder mystery? Sometimes the clearest evidence still doesn't reveal the complete truth. Fact 14. Sweet potatoes were life on Rapa Nui. The staple crop, the reliable food source, the agricultural heart of the civilization. And as the forests disappeared, the potato yields began to fail. Skeletal remains from this period tell a grim story in their very bones. Malnutrition markers, stress indicators, evidence of starvation spreading through the population. And here's the tragic irony. This decline happened just as Moai carving reached its peak. The greatest monuments were being created even as the people who carved them began to starve. Was it denial? Desperation? A final act of faith that the statues would restore prosperity? Or had the society become so committed to the monuments that they couldn't stop, even as their world collapsed around them? Picture the quarry workers, hungry, exhausted, still lifting their stone tools, still carving, still believing. Fact 15. A 2025 study revealed something almost unimaginable. At the height of the ecological crisis, rats outnumbered humans 3-1. Imagine that. For every person on the island, 3 rats. Without natural predators, the rat population exploded into what researchers call a rat apocalypse. They consumed seeds, bird eggs, crops, everything. The island became a case study in what happens when an invasive species encounters an ecosystem with no evolutionary defenses. The rats didn't mean to destroy paradise. But they did. Thoroughly. Efficiently. Almost completely. Close your eyes and think about unintended consequences, about how small decisions can cascade into catastrophe. Fact 16. Here's a curious botanical mystery. In the crater lakes of Rapa Nui grows Tatora reed. Exactly the same species found in South America, 3,700 kilometers away. Not a similar species. The same one. Genetic analysis confirms it. So how did South American reeds end up in isolated Pacific lakes? Was there pre-Columbian contact, Polynesian voyagers reaching the coast of what is now Chile or Peru, bringing back seeds? Or did South Americans sail east, crossing the Pacific with reed samples? The plants themselves are evidence of contact, but contact that no written record confirms, voyages that exist only in DNA and seed dispersal patterns. Sometimes botanical evidence whispers secrets that human voices never recorded. Fact 17. Walk across Rapa Nui today and you'll notice strange formations in the earth. Lines and depressions carving through the grassland like scars or pathways. Researchers call them ghost trails, the eroded remnants of routes that once wound through the vanished forests. Were these sacred paths connecting ceremonial sites? Trade routes between clans? Processional ways for moving the Moai? They haunted the landscape, these traces of a lost geography, reminding us that the island's very shape has been rewritten by ecological collapse. The land remembers what we've forgotten, writing its history in contours only visible from above. Fact 18. Birds were sacred on Rapa Nui, their presence interpreted as manifestations of divine favor. The forests hosted massive seabird colonies, thousands upon thousands nesting in the trees, their calls filling the air. And as the forests fell, the birds vanished. The colonies collapsed. The sacred connection was severed. Some researchers believe this loss of mana, spiritual power derived from the seabirds, triggered psychological and social collapse as profound as the ecological destruction. When the gods' messengers disappear, what happens to faith? Imagine the silence after the last flock departed, never to return. Fact 19. Here's a small mystery within the larger one. Today, eucalyptus trees thrive on Easter Island, growing robustly where native species struggle and fail. These were introduced by Europeans, but they flourish in soil that supposedly can't support forests anymore. Why? Do they access different nutrients? Have they adapted to degraded conditions in ways native species cannot? Or is there some hidden soil alchemy, some chemical or biological factor that favors invasive species over natives? It's a microcosm of the larger mystery. Why can't the island heal itself? Sometimes the questions that seem smallest unlock understanding of the whole. Fact 20. Climate scientists examining ancient weather patterns found something unexpected. No significant drought preceded the collapse. Rainfall remained relatively stable. Temperatures didn't dramatically shift. This contradicts the natural assumption that climate change drove the deforestation. If the weather was stable, then the collapse was entirely human-caused. Overfarming, rat introduction, unsustainable harvesting. Unless, and here the mystery deepens, unless it was something else entirely. Rapa Nui legends speak of divine retribution, of taboos broken and gods angered. Science finds no drought. Tradition speaks of supernatural punishment. And we're left wondering if categories like natural and human-caused are too simple for what really happened. The truth often resides where data and story intersect, in places our categories can't quite reach. Breathe slowly. Let these riddles settle in your mind like sediment. We've witnessed an ecosystem's transformation, a paradise lost. But civilizations are more than their environments. They're the people who laugh and struggle and dream. Our next segment explores the human mystery, the lost civilization that created wonders and then vanished. 20,000 people. At its peak, Rapa Nui supported 20,000 souls on an island barely 64 square miles. 20,000 people creating a civilization that would puzzle humanity for centuries after they were gone. How did they do it? And more hauntingly, where did they go? Fact 21. Consider the achievement. A population of 20,000 supporting monumental construction projects that would challenge societies with far more resources. They had no metal tools, only stone. No wheeled vehicles. No draft animals. No formal writing system to coordinate complex projects. And yet they carved and erected nearly 1,000 massive statues, built hundreds of ceremonial platforms, developed sophisticated agricultural systems. Modern project managers study their accomplishments and struggle to understand the organizational capacity required. How did they plan? How did they allocate labor? How did they maintain the coordination needed for generation-spanning projects? Imagine being part of a society where everyone understood their role in creating something that would outlast them by centuries. Fact 22. 27 wooden tablets survive, covered in symbols called rongo-rongo. For 200 years, linguists, anthropologists, and cryptographers have attempted to decipher them. 200 years of failure. The symbols are clearly systematic, repeating patterns, structured arrangements. But what do they mean? Are they a lunar calendar tracking agricultural cycles? Genealogical records preserving lineages? Sacred chants encoding religious knowledge? Musical notation? Poetry? Every proposed translation crumbles under scrutiny. The tablets remain mute, their secrets locked behind symbols we can see but cannot read. Sometimes knowledge is preserved in forms we can touch but never understand. Fact 23. In 1862, slave raiders descended on Rapa Nui. 1,200 islanders were kidnapped and transported to Peru to work in brutal conditions. Among them were the last people who could read rongo-rongo. The chiefs, the priests, the keepers of knowledge. Most died in slavery. A handful returned, already dying of smallpox. And with them died the ability to read the tablets. Did the survivors hide a key somewhere? A translation guide? A primer? A cipher? Researchers dream of finding such a document, the Rosetta Stone of rongo-rongo hidden in a cave or sealed in stone. But if it exists, it remains unfound. Knowledge can be more fragile than stone, evaporating like morning dew when the keepers are taken. Fact 24. European diseases arrived with European ships. By 1877, the population that had once numbered 20,000 had collapsed to just over 100. 100 survivors carrying the memories of an entire civilization. The petroglyphs carved during this period show haunting imagery, figures that researchers interpret as plague spirits, protective symbols, desperate appeals to gods who seem to have abandoned the island. These ghost carvings speak of terror and grief in visual language, the only testimony we have to suffering that no written account captured. Run your fingers over those carved stones in your imagination, feeling the desperation etched into volcanic rock. Fact 25. Oral histories speak of 7 original clans, 7 founding lineages that divided the island among themselves. But tracing these clans forward through time, researchers encounter a void. They vanish, not gradually assimilated or merged. They simply cease to appear in the genealogies. Did internecine warfare drive some to extinction? Were there catastrophes that wiped out entire family lines? The Moai themselves may hold clues, different carving styles, different Ahu architectures, possibly representing different clans. But if the statues are monuments, they're monuments to families that no longer exist. Imagine being the last of your line, carrying memories no one else shares. Fact 26. The Ahu platforms that hold the Moai aren't randomly placed. Archaeological surveys reveal careful alignments with solstices and equinoxes, the rising and setting points of the sun at crucial moments in the year. This suggests astronomical knowledge, calendrical sophistication. But no calendars survive. No astronomical texts. No instruction manuals. Were the Moai themselves the calendar? Were they positioned as permanent markers, stone clocks for tracking the sacred year? So what festivals did they mark? What rituals occurred when sunlight struck specific statues at specific moments? The statues stand in precise relationship to the cosmos, but the meaning of that relationship is lost. Fact 27. At the quarry of Reino Ruraku, hundreds of Moai remain in various stages of completion. Some nearly finished, some barely begun. They stand at odd angles, embedded in the volcanic slope, frozen in the process of birth. Walking among them feels like entering a moment preserved in amber. The tools are still there, the cutting channels visible, the next steps obvious. And then, nothing. Everything stopped. Was there a taboo declared? Did a religious leader proclaim the work cursed? Did resources finally run out completely? The abruptness suggests sudden catastrophe or dramatic proclamation, not gradual decline. Picture that last day, the last strike of the last stone tool, the workers setting down their implements and walking away forever. Fact 28. Skeletons from the post-contact period show sharp increases in violent trauma, fractured skulls, defensive wounds, injuries consistent with warfare. The same period saw the systematic toppling of Moai, those 400 fallen giants. The archaeological evidence paints a picture of a civilization tearing itself apart. But was the Moai toppling cause or effect? Were the statues destroyed in clan wars, each toppling representing a victory? Or was their destruction the final desperate act of a culture that had lost faith in the ancestors the statues represented? Violence and spiritual crisis intertwine so completely we can no longer separate them. Fact 29. The oral epics describe wars between the long-eared and short-eared peoples. Some interpret this literally, different ethnic groups with different ear adornment customs. Others see it as metaphor, social classes, the elite versus the workers, the statue makers versus those who labored to support them. The epics describe a final battle, a ditch filled with fire, a massacre. Archaeological evidence for this specific event is ambiguous. But the story persists, passed down through generations, insisting that Rapa Nui tore itself apart along class lines, that the workers finally revolted against the Moai building aristocracy. We can't know if the story is history or allegory, but either way, it reveals a civilization aware of its own divisions. Fact 30. When Europeans arrived in 1722, they found something unexpected. The islanders showed little reverence for the Moai. The statues weren't being tended or honored. Many were already toppled. This suggests that the Moai religion had collapsed perhaps a century earlier, that the faith that built 1,000 monuments had already died before European contact. What revolution occurred in that lost century? What caused an entire people to abandon the beliefs that had defined them for generations? Sometimes the most profound changes happen in the gaps between recorded history, in the silences between visiting ships. Rest your mind for a moment. We've glimpsed a civilization at its height and watched it fall. But the story doesn't end with collapse. From the ashes of the Moai religion, something new emerged. Stranger, more dangerous, more urgent. The Birdman cult awaits us in the darkness. Around 1680, the Moai fell silent and a new god demanded attention. Make, the creator, and his chosen messengers weren't stone giants. They were seabirds. The Birdman cult rose from the ruins of the old faith, replacing ancestor worship with an annual ritual so dangerous that many who attempted it never returned. Welcome to one of the Pacific's strangest religious transformations. Fact 31. Why would an entire civilization abandon the Moai? These statues represented centuries of labor, countless generations of devotion, the embodiment of ancestral power. And then, around 1680, the islanders simply stopped. They turned instead to the Birdman cult, which required no monuments, no massive construction, only courage and luck and the blessing of seabirds. Was it ecological collapse that made stone carving impossible? Resource depletion? Or was it spiritual crisis? A loss of faith in ancestors who hadn't prevented catastrophe? The shift suggests trauma so deep it required completely reimagining the sacred. Imagine the moment when the first elder declared the old ways finished, when the first competitor dove into shark-infested waters seeking a new kind of salvation. Fact 32. The ritual was this: swim from the ceremonial village of Orongo to the tiny islet of Motu Nui, nearly a mile offshore through notoriously dangerous waters. Wait for the first sooty terns to lay eggs. Obtain an egg. Swim back. Whoever's representative succeeded first became the Birdman, ruling for a year with godlike authority. Simple in description. In practice, the waters are cold, the currents treacherous, and sharks patrol the channel. Many swimmers died. Many more never completed the journey. And yet, year after year, competitors attempted it. Did some possess supernatural swimming abilities, knowledge of currents we've forgotten? Or was it simply that faith makes the impossible seem achievable? Close your eyes and feel the water's cold embrace, the egg fragile against your chest, the shore impossibly distant. Fact 33. At Orongo, over 4,000 petroglyphs cover the rocks. The images show half-human, half-bird figures, the Birdmen themselves. But are these depictions of ritual champions? Or do they represent something more? Some researchers suggest they're spirit guides, intermediary beings between the human and divine realms. Others propose they show shamans in trance states, experiencing transformation. And a few whisper about shapeshifters, people who could literally become birds. The images are eerily consistent across hundreds of carvings, suggesting either a rigid iconographic tradition or repeated visions of the same transformation. Art this consistent speaks either of shared belief or shared experience. And sometimes those are the same thing. Fact 34. The winner sponsor ruled for a year, living in seclusion, holding absolute authority. This was meritocracy in its purest, strangest form. Not inherited power, not accumulated wealth, but a single feat of skill and luck determining leadership. Did this system solve the resource wars that had torn the society apart? Did it provide a peaceful alternative to clan warfare? For a time, perhaps it did. The competition channeled aggression into ritual, turned potential violence into a quest for divine favor. But it was also deeply unstable. Power changing hands annually, alliances shifting, no long-term planning possible. Imagine a society perpetually poised on the edge of transformation, never quite settling into stability. Fact 35. Make, the creator god of the Birdman cult, is depicted without hands. Curious detail. And his primary demand? The first turn egg of the season. Not food from the fields. Not fish from the sea. The egg of a migratory seabird. Why prioritize this over reliable island resources? Some researchers believe the birds represented connection to the wider world, proof that life existed beyond Rapa Nui's isolation. The egg became a symbol of renewal, of life continuing despite ecological collapse. Make's handless form might represent dependence on nature rather than human craft, a theology born from the failure of human ambition. The god who cannot build teaches the value of what nature provides freely. Fact 36. The Birdman contests ended abruptly in the 1860s. Christian missionaries arrived, viewed the cult as pagan deviance, and systematically destroyed evidence of the practices. They burned artifacts, defaced petroglyphs, drove the practices underground. Some islanders whisper that the missionaries feared the Birdman manna was too powerful, that it threatened Christianity in ways the dying Moai religion never had. Was there truth to this? Did the cult possess vitality that made it dangerous? We'll never fully know what was lost when the missionaries applied torch and hammer to Orongo's sacred sites. Zealotry erases nuance, and what's erased can never be fully recovered. Fact 37. On Motu Nui, the tiny islet where competitors sought the sacred eggs, there stand unexplained stone cairns. Small structures carefully built, serving no obvious practical purpose. Were they altars for secret initiations? Markers for successful egg hunters? Memorials for those who died in the attempt? Or are they older still, predating the Birdman cult? Remnants of rituals we know nothing about? The islet holds more questions than answers, each stone pile a mystery, each carefully placed rock a testimony to purpose we can only guess at. Small sacred spaces often hold the deepest secrets. Fact 38. The Birdman houses at Orongo have a peculiar feature. Hidden crawl spaces, low passages barely large enough for a person to squeeze through. Were these ritual rebirth chambers, spaces where initiates experienced symbolic death and renewal? Or were they escape routes for a more practical reason, protection during raids or conflicts? The architecture suggests intentional design, but the intention remains opaque. Modern visitors, crawling through the low passages, report feelings of claustrophobia mixed with strange euphoria, as if the spaces themselves retain some echo of their purpose. Architecture can be a kind of frozen ritual, the physical form of spiritual practice. Fact 39. The timing of the egg retrieval aligned with lunar cycles with remarkable consistency. This suggests sophisticated calendrical knowledge, an understanding of how moon, migration patterns, and seasonal change interconnected. And here's where the mystery deepens. Some researchers believe the Rongo tablets might encode this sacred calendar, that the undeciphered script preserves the Birdman timing system. If true, cracking Rongo would reveal not just words, but an entire cosmological system linking written symbols, bird behavior, lunar phases, and spiritual power. The key to one mystery might unlock several, if only we could find it. Fact 40. After the cult suppression, there was a brief cultural revival, a last flowering of traditional practices before complete collapse into colonial subjugation. The Birdman rituals returned briefly, quietly, practiced by those who remembered. But they couldn't restore what was lost. The ecological balance remained broken. The population continued declining. The sacred power, whether real or perceived, couldn't reverse centuries of degradation. And so the question haunts us. Was the cult's failure inevitable? Or if it had been allowed to continue, Might it have evolved into something that could genuinely heal the fractured society? Sometimes we lose traditions just as they're about to teach us what we most need to know. Breathe deeply. We've journeyed from stone giants to swimming shamans, from fallen empires to dangerous rituals. One segment remains. We return to the present moment, to the mysteries that exist right now, today, waiting in the shadows of Rapa Nui's landscape. The mysteries of Easter Island didn't end with the past. Even now, in our age of satellites and DNA analysis and ground-penetrating radar, the island keeps revealing new secrets and asking new questions. Fact 41. In 1960, a massive tsunami struck Easter Island. Walls of water crashed across the landscape, moving with the force of nature unleashed. When the waters receded, observers noticed something impossible. Several Moai had been moved, not toppled but realigned, now facing more precisely inland than before. The physics of this baffles experts. Tsunami waves should topple or scatter objects, not carefully reposition them. Some whisper about supernatural intervention, ancestors protecting their island by turning the statues toward the people. Others propose wave dynamics we don't fully understand, perfectly calibrated forces that could rotate massive stones. Either explanation feels inadequate. Sometimes nature and mystery become indistinguishable. Fact 42. Walk among the Moai with a crowd of tourists, and you might notice something unsettling. The eyes seem to follow you. Move left and the gaze follows. Move right, same thing. The statue called Traveling Moai at Ahu Kote Riku, one of the few with restored coral eyes, creates this effect most strongly. Is it an optical illusion, the product of careful carving creating a focal point that works from multiple angles? Or is there something more? The watching presence of ancestors, the accumulated mana of centuries making itself felt? Skeptics and believers walk the same ground and see different truths in those coral and obsidian eyes. Belief and perception shape each other in ways that make objective truth difficult to isolate. Fact 43. Recent drone surveys and ground-penetrating radar have revealed something extraordinary beneath the grass. More Ahu platforms, more stone structures, entire networks of ceremonial architecture hidden just below the surface. Undiscovered statue cities might wait in the earth, complete complexes that could revolutionize our understanding of Rapa Nui's society. Each new dry season exposes a little more. Each technological advance in remote sensing hints at structures we haven't yet excavated. The island is like a book we've only read the first few pages of, with chapters upon chapters still waiting. The Earth is patient with its revelations, sharing them slowly across decades and centuries. Fact 44. 80 Moai reside in museums worldwide, acquired during colonial periods when Rapa Nui had little power to prevent their removal. Now, descendants demand their repatriation. The statues should come home, they argue. But here's where it gets strange. Some islanders claim that Moai lose their power when removed from Rapa Nui's soil, that's separated from their Ahu, from the volcanic stone they were born from. They become empty, mere sculptures rather than vessels of ancestral mana. If this is true, repatriation isn't just about cultural justice. It's about spiritual restoration, about returning power to its source. Museum curators hold stone. The island waits for souls to return. Imagine the journey home for a statue that's been absent for a century, crossing oceans again, feeling island soil beneath it once more. Fact 45. Climate change is drying Rapa Nui's crater lakes. Water levels drop year by year, exposing shorelines that have been submerged for centuries. And with each dry season, more Moai appear. Statues that were hidden underwater, perhaps deliberately sunken in rituals we'll never fully understand, are emerging into sunlight after hundreds of years. Some islanders speak of ancient prophecies, warnings that when the lakes dry and the hidden Moai return, something profound will change. Coincidence? Climate crisis? Or is the island itself responding to the modern world, revealing secrets at precisely the moment we might finally be ready to understand them? The boundary between omen and environmental science becomes beautifully, mysteriously blurred. Fact 46. There's a tree that exists nowhere else on Earth in the wild. The Toromiro once covered parts of Easter Island, its twisted branches and yellow flowers part of the native forest. It went extinct on Rapa Nui in the 1960s, completely gone, but seeds had been collected, preserved in botanical gardens worldwide. Now, Toromiro has been replanted on the island. It survives only there, a ghost returned to its haunted homeland. Does it carry genetic memory of the old forest? Can trees remember? When the wind moves through its branches, some claim to hear echoes of something ancient, something that refuses to remain extinct. Resurrection and memory intertwine in that single species, stubbornly refusing to accept oblivion. Fact 47. In Hangaroa, the island's main settlement, there are psychics and spiritual practitioners who report something unusual. At night, particularly during certain moon phases, they claim to hear the Moai whispering. Not with voices exactly, more like impressions, feelings, sensations that form into something like language. Collective hallucination? Acoustic anomalies in the volcanic stone responding to temperature changes and wind? Or is the island so saturated with history, with mana, with the accumulated spiritual energy of centuries, that consciousness itself becomes porous here? Scientists study the acoustics. Believers close their eyes and listen. And the boundary between explanation and experience remains beautifully unresolved. Some islands are thin places, where the membrane between worlds grows permeable in the darkness. Fact 48. In 2020, DNA analysis revealed something that rewrites Pacific history. The Rapa Nui people carry Native American genetic markers dating to around 1200 CE, centuries before Columbus, before any documented contact between Polynesia and the Americas. This means Polynesian voyagers reached South America and returned, or Native Americans reached Rapa Nui, or there was sustained contact we never knew about. The genetic evidence is irrefutable. The Tadora reeds make sense now. The sweet potatoes, the architectural similarities, all of it points to a hidden history of trans-Pacific contact, of voyages we've forgotten or never recorded, of human capability that exceeds what we thought possible for the era. DNA remembers what stories forgot, writing history in molecular code. Fact 49. The Tupti Festival occurs each February, a celebration of Rapa Nui culture that includes a revival of the Birdman race. Modern swimmers attempt the journey to Motu Nui, not for spiritual supremacy but for cultural continuity, for connection to the past. And here's what's strange. Many report experiencing guiding currents, flows of water that seem to pull them toward the islet, helping them navigate the treacherous channel. Coincidence? Learned knowledge of ocean patterns? Or does the island itself remember the ritual, the waters retaining some echo of thousands of sacred journeys? The swimmers emerge from the ocean speaking of forces they can't quite explain, experiences that resist purely physical description. Ritual repeated becomes ritual remembered, even by stone and water and wind. Fact 50. The seas are rising. Climate change brings water levels up, inch by inch, year by year. Already, some coastal ahu are threatened, waves lapping at platforms that have stood above the tide for centuries. Will Rapa Nui's mysteries sink beneath the Pacific, eroded by salt and time? Or will rising waters expose new secrets, revealing Moai and structures currently hidden below the waterline? The island faces a paradox, destruction and revelation arriving on the same waves. As some secrets are lost, others emerge. The ocean giveth and the ocean taketh away. And Easter Island, which has survived so much isolation, ecological collapse, slavery, disease, colonialism, now faces its greatest challenge from the very element that surrounds it. The mysteries may sink forever, or they may emerge anew, transformed by water into something we've never seen before. And so our journey ends, but not really ends. Ends for tonight, perhaps. Ends for this moment of rest and wonder. But the mysteries themselves, they continue. They wait beneath grass and stone and water, patient as only ancient things can be patient. We've walked among giants tonight. We've watched forests disappear and birds take flight. We've witnessed civilizations rise and transform and fall and persist in unexpected ways. We've touched questions that have no answers, or rather, that have too many answers, each one true in its own way. Easter Island teaches us something profound in its mysteries. That not everything can be known. That some questions are more valuable than their answers. That uncertainty can be sacred. That the space between what we know and what we can never know, that's where wonder lives. As you drift towards sleep tonight, let your mind wander across that windswept island. See the Moai in moonlight, their shadows long across ancient grass. Hear the Pacific wind carrying whispers in a language no one speaks anymore. Feel the mana of the place, real or imagined. And perhaps the distinction doesn't matter. The statues are still there, right now, in this very moment as you close your eyes. They're standing watch on an island in the middle of the endless ocean, 3,700 kilometers from anywhere, keeping their vigil, keeping their secrets, waiting. Some of them face the villages that are no longer there, watching over people long gone. Some face the sea, their stone eyes on the horizon, looking for something, or perhaps just looking, endlessly looking the way sentinels do. And in the quarry, El Gigante still waits, half-born, perpetually on the verge of completion, frozen in becoming. A reminder that some things are meant to remain unfinished. That process can be more sacred than completion. Let that thought settle over you like a soft blanket. Unfinished, unresolved, unknown. And somehow, in that uncertainty, finding peace. The mysteries of Easter Island aren't problems to be solved. They're invitations to wonder, invitations to imagine, invitations to sit with the beautiful, profound reality that we don't have all the answers. And that's perfectly, wonderfully all right. Sleep well, traveler. Dream of stone faces and seabirds. Dream of forests that might someday return. Dream of swimmers cutting through dark water, carrying precious eggs. Dream of voices in Rongo-Rongo, singing in a language that time has forgotten but the wind remembers. The Moai will keep watch while you rest. The mysteries will still be there in the morning. And the island will continue its slow revelation, sharing its secrets one drought, one excavation, one whisper at a time. Good night.